Hey, welcome back to Lean by Doing podcast. I'm Brian, and today I want to talk to you about how we've changed from doing traditional onboarding to onboarding with a lean bend. So let's go. One of the hardest things about owning a business is definitely onboarding new hires. This is something that will consume so much of your time, and you will get so little in return if you're terrible at it. Historically speaking, as a traditional business, the way that we operated and hired and fired and promoted was very different than what we're doing with lean. In the past, we often would expect people to just come into the building and understand what we're doing without a lot of training or without a lot of explanation. And we would be like, all right, sink or swim. And 90 days later, after we've invested time, energy, and effort into these people, they weren't a good fit and we would have to let them go. However, this is very tough when you're a lean business because in lean, it's all about waste. And 90 days of putting time into somebody to just let them go is a waste. It's a waste of their time, it's a waste of your time, and it's a waste of all the resources that went into that person. So you have to start thinking differently when you're doing onboarding and new hiring when you're a lean business. So we've always had a really good culture here at JCR Off-Road. We primarily manufacture off-road accessories for, Toyota and Lexus, stuff like that. So it's basically adult toy parts for vehicles. So if you're a car guy or a Jeep guy or whatever it may be, it's easy to come into this building and be excited about what we're doing every day because we're not building, chair legs for furniture. We're doing something that's kind of unique and kind of fun. The marketing is fun. The idea of doing it, camping, off-roading, it's cool. And many of the people that work here are enthusiasts. So when they come to work every day, they're doing something that they enjoy. Because of that, our culture has been somewhat elevated beyond like a normal working culture. The other reason I believe that has been that way is I'm a pretty transparent leader and I always have been. So I feel like that has always aided us in, retaining staff. But heading into lean, what we realized was that we were grossly overstaffed, not only on the production floor, but more importantly, in our overhead. And that's a really hard pill to swallow because you know that as a business that's doing lean, that's waste. It's wasteful to be overstaffed. You're wasting the resources, you're wasting the money, you're wasting the time that you have with your employees that, they're not functioning at their optimized point because there's, not enough work for them to do. This brings me back to a quote from the book, The Road Less Stupid. And it says something basically on the lines of holding on to overhead for sales that you do not have is stupid. And I felt that like in my bones. And I was like, oh, that hurts. Because we're all coming down off of that peak of 2022 and 2023. And we're starting to get into a little bit of a recession and, the tariff war going on and, all this stuff going on. And sales are dipping. And that's probably pretty common amongst the majority of our businesses. So it's really hard when you're making a lean transition and you're trying to optimize, but yet here you are with this like bloated staff. As you go forward, cutting into muscle is hard. So the last thing you want to do is just to be taking chunks out of your muscle from your team in order to withstand the culture that we're in or the time period that we're in. Yeah, it's difficult. But what we had to realize over time was that we were going to lose people with this lean implementation. And although we had a good place to work, things change. And they change drastically and they change very quickly. So we had gone from this traditional business that operated a certain way to now we're doing everything in a different way. And some people just couldn't make that transition. During our 9 months or so of lean, we have seen about 8 employees leave, either by us letting them go or by them leaving on their own because they weren't buying in. But what we had gotten to is a point where we needed to look at hiring some production positions because we were actually now to the point where we needed to replace or backfill those positions instead of just allowing the attrition to kind of level load the business. So as any traditional business, the way that we hired historically would be, we make an Indeed post and we throw it out into the world. For us, we did something a little differently. We always had these 5 questions and we're like, in order to be able to get an interview here, you must do these 5 questions. And like in 2017, 18, 19, it worked. People would always submit those things. We noticed that over the last few years, people stopped submitting them. And we always just kind of chalked it up as like, no one wants to work or, the market is too saturated with job opportunities and it's really hard to compete. We all had those excuses because it was hard to find people. But what I didn't realize was that things had just changed. and we hadn't thought differently yet. So, we would throw our Indeed post up, and then we would bring people in for an interview. And if we liked them, we would show them around, and then, all right, here we are, we're going to hire you. And that is the way that most businesses operate and hire. And it is okay. It works kind of, but there's definitely an optimized way you can do this. And with Lean, I found a better option. We tried to backfill a position that we lost pretty recently, and it failed. It failed. We used our traditional mindset when trying to hire into a lean business, and that person lasted about a month, and they probably shouldn't even have lasted a couple of weeks. But we were desperate because we needed that position filled. And we were hopeful because we liked this person in an interview that they were going to be able to figure it out and we were going to be able to move forward. But they kind of self-opted out. And once that position opened again, we had to think, what can we do differently this time? We've changed everything. We've continuously improved everything in our operations, but we haven't changed how we hire people. So what can we change here? When I first started with Lean, I was down visiting my dad. He lives in Houston, Texas. And I looked up on the Lean Hub and I saw that JB Cheatham from Minco was in Conroe, which was like 15 minutes from my dad's house. So I had messaged JB. I said, hey, is there a chance I could come for a Lean tour? And when I got there, one of the things that JB is like excellent at is Monday.com. And he was showcasing his Monday.com stuff to me. And in there, he had this like onboarding playbook. And in there, he had all these people that had interviewed with him. He had all the links to their resumes, and he had scoring system for them. And if they didn't score over a certain amount, I think it was 20 points, then they don't even get to move forward. They're done. And, on this list, he had all of his people that were disqualified so that if they applied again in the future, he knew already that they were disqualified. And then he had his list of people that were qualified. So when he had a job opening, they were options that he could pull from his list and add. And I was like, that's pretty interesting. It wasn't something that I was like heavily interested in at the time because, like I said, we were overstaffed and I didn't really see a need to hire. So I just kind of put it in my memory bank. So when we started to rehire people, I reached out to JB and I was like, hey, can you clarify how you're doing this? And so he went through the whole thing again for me. And then he also included a guy by the name of Peter Potts. And Peter is exceptional when it comes to the same onboarding process. So between JB and Peter, they just rained knowledge down onto us on how they've had really good success hiring in a lean culture. And because of that, we were able to kind of build our own new system. So one of the first things that we had to do was start thinking differently. And my GM, Kevin, and I sat down in the office one day and we're like, what is going on? We make these job postings. Nobody's responding to the questions. It's like nobody's reading the job description. So Kevin was like, you know what? I'm going to create a user and I'm going to go on and see what the applicants are seeing. And I was like, oh man, this is a pretty good idea, actually. In Lean, we always focus on the customer. What is best for the customer? And we have internal customers, the next person in the process. But in this particular thing, the next customer is that potential new hire. So we should be looking at what the customer is seeing and then adapting. The first thing we did was we went into Indeed and we searched a job description and we started to look at what they were seeing. And I was blown away. I could not believe it. It was totally different than what I expected them to be seeing, which totally made sense for the reasons why we weren't getting our questions answered. So the way it looks for an applicant is they basically see a job title and then the wage and then the benefits. If they want to scroll way down, they will see your job description. But for them, it's like fishing. They're just throwing out messages and resumes and applications, hoping that somebody's going to contact them back. And when someone contacts them back, at that point, then they actually go through and read your description, which I think is crazy, but also I understand it, right? It's kind of like that dating apps where you're just kind of swiping, yeah, I'm interested. Yeah, I'm interested. No, I'm not interested. They're doing the same thing on their job hunt. And once that came to my mind, I was like, this is crazy. We got to change how we're doing this. So the first thing I did, and I saw this with Peter Potts' jobs postings, is you change the title. So for us, it was a packaging position. So we said shipping packaging warehouse / lean process improver. Now, when people look at the job descriptions, they're seeing a difference right away. And that I felt like made a big impact. But I didn't want to stop there. I figured there had to be a better way. And historically speaking, and I'm sure you probably are in the same position, you share the lion's share of the burden when it comes to doing job interviews. And they can eat up an entire day, even an entire week, if you're just stacking interviews on top of each other all day long, trying to get people in, to try to get through people to figure out which ones you want to hire. And that is a difficult process. But I figured that there has to be a way that we can do this better. One of my focuses has been to optimize the opportunities that my guys have to learn how to do leadership. I always say, how do you expect tomorrow's leaders to learn if we never give them an opportunity to experience leadership stuff? And oftentimes we put people kind of in the on deck circle for leadership, and we're hoping that by being adjacent to it, that they're going to learn. But if you think back to how you learned by doing it. You have to give these people the opportunity to do leadership things. So I figured this was a great opportunity to start that. So I took my Lean All-Star team and I said, all right, everybody, you guys are all going to help us do interviews. Surprisingly, they were pretty excited about the opportunity and it went off pretty well. The way that structure looks, we built standard work for what an interview would look like. And then I have, a combination of about 10 people and we do 2 people interviews. My Lean All-Stars get to jump in and do interviews with the people that they're hiring, which is great because they should have a say in who we're hiring. They have to work directly with this person. So why am I sitting at the top hiring people when I don't have to physically go on the floor and work with them all day long? Because we're lean and we want to optimize stuff, we had to figure out a way to create standard work so that we all knew the same protocol. So step 1 for us was to do a sit down, like just a 5-minute question and answer to get a feel for the person. Then if that person is somebody that we like or dislike, we can kind of filter them from there. The next stop is to do a lean tour. So we actually walk them out and we created a standard work for that, kind of stay where we stop, where we talk about Kanban, we talk about standard work, we show the clean bathrooms, we show the break room, and we show some of the workspaces. However, what we've done is if the candidate is not qualified, we do a really short tour and then we end the interview. If we like them, we bring them back in and we actually have a question set up that scores them. So similar to what Peter Potts and JB are doing, I use ChatGPT to help me with this. I basically outlined 5 things that had to do with culture and teamwork. And then I said, hey, help me make some questions and a scoring system for it. And that worked out pretty well. We had to fine tune it a little bit as we worked through it. But basically we asked these questions and we're trying to harvest if they're going to be a good fit. And we score them based on each question. And if they don't score more than 20 points, they're disqualified. If they score more than 20 points, then we move on to the next stage. The next stage is a day trial. I know there are places that do this differently. I know some places that can do 1 week or 2 week trials, but I feel like that could be really difficult, especially if somebody's working. They may be able to do 1 day or a half a day. So I felt like it was okay to be somewhat flexible with people, but we try to shoot for a full day trial. The way that looks for them is we created standard work. We send it right to them so they have the expectations of what it looks like. But step 1 is they're going to come in and they're going to clean the bathroom with either me or a member of our leadership team. That gives us an opportunity to get to know them, especially if we haven't done the interview process with them. So it gives us a chance to get to know them as well. We do the bathroom cleaning. We explain why standards matter, why it's important. And then from there, I turn them over to their department for the end of 3S, which is usually about 15 minutes for them. Then they get a chance to see what 3S looks like. After 3S, they do the morning meeting and then they go to work. At that point, they spend the first half of their day working with somebody from an area, so a team lead. And then the second half of the day, they work solo. And we get to see how they interact working through the process of whatever that department and whatever that role is. At the end of the day, we bring them in and we do a wrap up. We basically ask them how it went. We ask them what we could do better. And then we pay them. We pay them $140 cash for a production job. They got to come in and see if they like the job. What's really cool about this is it gives them the opportunity to say, is this a job that I like? Or is it a job that I don't like? Because they can opt out at that point. If they decide, nah, this isn't a good fit for me, it's better than them coming on board and you creating a punch code for the time clock and you're enrolling them in healthcare and you're doing all these things for them to not feel like they're a good fit. It saves us all of that burden to be able to just have them here for 1 day to see what it looks like, see what it feels like, and try to sell them on, why we're different. As a lean business, we're different. We're weird. We do things differently. We're cleaning our own common spaces. We're requiring a lot of our employees so that they feel challenged all day. It's always on them and they feel it. So it's a very different environment and you want to make sure that you're portraying why we're different and we are a little weird. So just to reinforce, hey, this isn't a normal place. It's different. It's going to feel different. It's going to be different. And you probably have never seen anything like this in your life. And by selling that and then them living in it, they can really decide if it's a good place or not. And we also get the opportunity to go around to our team and say, hey, what did you think of this person? Because once again, they have to work with this person every single day. So if they don't like them, then we probably shouldn't hire them. After the first few trial days, I had some feedback from the people that had done the trial days. And I was able to continuously improve this process. So I actually created more standard work. One was like a what to expect on your day. And then I basically outlined what the day looked like for them. And then we would send that to them before they did their trial day. There was another one that we did as well, where we created another standard work on like how to get to the building for the interview. I haven't gone to the same level that JB has done, where he's actually like cataloging everything. We just kind of started, but we knew that we had a position to fill and we needed to fill it pretty quickly. We wanted to make sure that we hired slow and fired fast on this one, instead of doing the opposite where we hire fast and fire slow. So far, we've talked about how a traditional business hires and how a lean business hires and some of the changes that we've made. But the next part of this episode, I wanted to do it with a guest. So if you don't mind, give me a quick second and I'll go grab them and we'll be right back. All right, I'm back and I have my guest. I would like to introduce you guys to Wyatt. Wyatt is our first new hire using our new process. So welcome, Wyatt.
Thank you.
And I have some questions for you because I just want to get a feel for what this process looked like to you. We had made a lot of changes to the way that we hired. In the past, we would just make an Indeed listing just like everybody else. Mm-hmm. And what we were realizing were that applicants were just kind of like fishing.
Yeah.
Where we thought they were like reading our job description and like really spending a lot of time understanding what we're doing.
Right.
And I don't believe that was the case at all. Uh-huh. So can you kind of elaborate on that?
So when I saw the listing, I actually read through it.
Okay.
Because I was actually very interested in it because it said packaging. I come from a packaging background. Like that's just what I did for 3-4 years. So I wanted to stay into that field. So I was just kind of going through Indeed, looking for packaging jobs. And I saw you guys and I was like, yes, I know what you guys do. Like I live in the area, so
yeah,
I was very eager to put my application in. And when you texted me back, I was on the phone with my girlfriend actually, and I was praying. I was like, "Oh my God, I hope I get this job." And then as soon as I hung up with her, you texted me, and I just started jumping for joy like a little kid on Christmas. I ain't even gonna lie.
You worked at Metro Toyota, which is our local Toyota dealership at one point. Yep. So you're very familiar with the models. And so when we say that, a third gen Toyota Tacoma, you know what that means.
Yep.
So that's a huge benefit, right? To come into that and understand it. Also, like we always talk about, like we're building stuff like adult toys.
We really are.
And you kind of are familiar because you're also into that kind of stuff. So like the passion's there.
Yeah.
So,
It's really cool to be a part of like the Toyota family still because my dad actually works at Denso and they make all bunch of Toyota parts.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool to stay in the Toyota family. So.
All right. So let's go back a little bit and talk about some of the process in which we hired you. This was the first time we had ever rolled this out. So you were like test exhibit 1 of our new process.
Guinea pig.
In the past, we would have brought you in for an interview. We would have it would have been Kevin and myself. We would have sat you down for an interview. We would have said, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Like all the traditional stuff. And then we would have showed you around and then we would debate, did we like him? Did we not like him? But we changed and we did it very different. And you were the first person that got to do a trial day.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So can you, if you don't mind me walking through, so I said, hey, Wyatt, first you're going to do this interview. Did you even have a clue who you were interviewing with? Did you know who they were?
No, I didn't. I just kind of came into the interview. The Indeed, I don't even know who texted me off of Indeed. It was just JCR. And they were like, can you come in for an interview today? I said, yeah, I'll be there at 4. I was super eager to just get in. There weren't a lot of questions asked on my end. It was more just like, this is the opportunity. I have to take it.
Yeah. So we actually use a group called the Lean All-Stars. And the Lean All-Stars for me are like my training ground for leadership. And the Lean All-Stars are the guys that really get this lean implementation stuff that we're doing. And I know that you're super new to it, but you're starting to see it a little bit. But the idea is that they can start helping like shape the company. So we said to our Lean All-Stars, we're going to start doing interviews and you guys are going to start handling these. So the people that handled your interview had never interviewed anybody in their life before.
That's awesome.
You were literally the first person that they interviewed.
That's awesome.
And you didn't even know.
I didn't even know.
Yeah. So it gave us an opportunity, one, to put 2 new people there and to interface with you. I was the one that was actually messaging you on Indeed.
Okay. So
I already knew kind of about who you were. Then also when on the trial day, when you came in, you cleaned bathrooms with me. And at that point you figured out who I was.
Yeah.
And I already kind of had an idea who you were. I did a little research. So I had at least some talking points, talk about where you came from, your history, your background, stuff like that. The whole goal with that trial day, especially like cleaning the bathrooms, which was probably a little weird.
It was eye-opening for sure. definitely seeing you first day and cleaning bathrooms like that. Like that's mad respect.
Yeah.
On your end.
It's the whole goal of it is to show you the importance of like the smallest things. And as we talked about while we're cleaning is that this is a training ground for lean.
Yeah.
This is everything has its place. This is why standards matter, the respect for people, respect for things. Yeah. It's all built there. Yeah. And it's a weird concept.
But it's weird, but it somehow just makes sense.
It does.
So
so after that, we went into the 3S. So you had like 15 minutes to figure out what 3S is. Now you've been here for about almost 2 weeks.
Yep.
And you've done 3S every day.
Yeah.
And so you're kind of to get you've already made some improvements as well. So that's exciting.
Yep.
So you did this trial day, you get this build up, we bring you in, we hand you the cash, we say, hey, thanks for doing it. We'll be in touch. Like what were your feelings at that point?
I felt pretty good.
Yeah.
I knew I came in and I knew I made a good impression of myself. Speaking of the trial day, that was the first time I've ever done something like that. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Seeing like actually getting my hands on and like trying out for this job to see if I actually like it, to pursue something different, which I didn't. I loved it. So I'm thankful for the opportunity.
Yeah.
But the trial day is something that I think you need to continue.
Yeah, for sure.
That just gives everybody an opportunity to see where everybody's at.
Yeah.
Because somebody new could come in thinking it's completely different than what it is and be like, hey, this isn't for me.
Yeah.
And that's acceptable. So I think it's awesome.
Yeah. That is something that the feedback that we've received from everyone that's done these trials has been like, I've never done this and it's awesome. And I think it's cool because it's a two-way street, right? You're getting an opportunity to see it, but we're also getting an opportunity to test drive you, right?
Yeah.
To see, do you fit in our culture? Because our culture is like what it's all about here.
Yeah.
Building a team, and you don't want to bring somebody in that's an obstacle, and you want them to integrate, but we also want them to be a mindful learner, and not everybody is there.
Right.
I'm not sure how old you are exactly.
I'm 24. I just turned 24.
So 24 years old. You've been out of school for like 6 years, right? We oftentimes turn off learning, right? We learn in a different way, but it's not the same. But what I've found, and I'm 44, is that you have to learn every single day. You have to find an audiobook. You have to do something. You have to continue to sculpt yourself because that's where growth happens over time. And like finding people that are hungry and eager and willing to dive into something that's completely different and explore it is great.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've never been anywhere that's done kind of what we're doing.
No. And it's really eye-opening to see a culture like this, because I would have never expected to see a culture like this in the world. I come from a background of just, hey, get it done. No excuses. And here it's like, hey, no, let's standardize this process. Like let's get the flow of things right. Let's take the time to do things the correct way.
Yeah.
Let's make improvements along the way. We're not just getting stuff out the door to get it out the door.
Yeah. Let's go one step further on this. So you're sitting at home, and I said, hey, we have a few more trials we still have to do. I think we had 2 or 3 more trial days that we still had to do. You were one of the first. I don't know, what were you just like fingers?
I was biting my fingernails, had my fingers crossed. I was praying.
Yeah.
I was just doing everything.
Yeah.
Everything, hoping and praying.
Yeah. So you came in pretty quickly too. So I said, hey, Wyatt, you want to start? You're like, it was on Thursday night, maybe. And you started that following Monday.
Yeah.
So you were ready to hit the ground running.
Yep.
The coolest thing about this was we did the trial day with you. So we knew exactly where you were and what you needed for training. So there was like no guesswork. It was pretty much just plug and play. All right, Wyatt, here's your station. Here's your stuff. You kind of remember, One thing I'd like to touch on is standard work. I mean, have you ever seen standard work like we're doing? Like,
so a little bit. The company that I was at before, we were trying to get to a standardized process, but we just couldn't figure out like where to start.
Yeah.
So it was kind of just a mess all over the place. It just random standardness, I guess you could say. So seeing it actually in a process that flows is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, this process is crazy because you can just plug in anybody and they just follow the work instructions. Like there's no mystery.
No, the SOPs are visual and verbal. I mean, it's
You've already been creating SOPs as well, so you jumped right into that. They're super easy.
Super easy.
Yeah, it's a great product.
It's just a picture on your phone and quick little description.
I'd really appreciate you taking the time to come in and record this with me.
I appreciate you having me on.
And before I go, though, I always ask, like, is there anything that we could do better? Like, you look at this company, are there things that we can improve that you've seen in the short time that you've been here?
You know, I've only been here for 2 weeks, and I've made little improvements. I just haven't been able to really open my eye and see the bigger picture yet, just because I'm so new. Like, I just want to get my feet underneath me before I start nitpicking everything else. I want to make sure I'm dialed in my process before I start, you know, like yesterday when we were talking about the little circle cells. Starting small and then expanding. I want to start small and then expand out.
I think that's a great approach. And one of the hardest things to do with lean is learning to see and learning to see the waste, learning to know where the waste is. And then once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's
you really can't.
Yeah, you're like, oh my gosh, this is a waste of motion. Even at home, you start to do it.
Yeah.
And you start to change the way that you're working because the whole process is to make your life faster, easier, more efficient.
Yeah.
And it works. So on the interview side, were there anything that we could do differently or build upon what we did so that in the future, as we add more people like you, Wyatt, that we can give them a better experience?
Maybe bring a few more people in.
Okay.
Like, this is the first time I've ever done this. So this is pretty cool. I mean, I would say probably bring in a few more people. And just kind of do like a round table segment.
Oh, that is a good suggestion. Yeah, that's something we're definitely going to continue to build on because it worked. I feel like that we hit we hit gold. We found a really good employee. Surprisingly, we actually found 3. We did 5 trial days. The first person, we didn't go through the first interviewing process properly, so they probably wouldn't have gotten a chance to do a trial. We did do one person that did a half day that wasn't a good fit, but the other 3 people that trialed are now coming on board.
Very cool.
So that's pretty cool that we were able to 3 for 5 essentially.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. So we're going to get a chance to kind of reimagine what that whole packaging shipping area looks like and feels like and the workflow feels. And you're going to get a direct input into that as we build for the future.
That's awesome.
So
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, anyways, I always end this with a fist bump. So thanks for joining the team.
Thank you.
Excited to have you and
Thank you for
looking
giving
forward
me
to
the
your
opportunity.
growth. Yeah, no problem, man. So that was such a cool opportunity to have Wyatt join me on my podcast. Could you imagine working somewhere for not even 2 weeks and your boss says, hey, you want to join me on a podcast and talk about lean? Super bold of him to take the opportunity and jump on the show. I think it was a really good way to show you guys kind of the efforts that we're putting into onboarding our people and finding a better way and a leaner way to do it. The one thing that's really cool about Wyatt is that he is basically customer feedback. So we always say, hey, what is a customer pull? Well, Wyatt's showing us what the customer wants and the customer feels so that we can adapt and make for a better onboarding process. So I think that was awesome. And I'm so thankful, Wyatt. Thank you so much for coming on the show. So as we wrap up this episode, I just want to take a minute and I want to challenge you. Are there areas that you can change in your onboarding process to make it easier? Are there people that are on the outside of your leadership circle that you have in the on-deck circle that you want to be future leaders? Can they help? How can they help with your onboarding process? How can they help with interviews? Are you allowing your team to pick their coworkers, or are you still picking their coworkers for them? We keep on saying that we need to be lean, we need to change our thinking, and this is an example of that. You need to look at your process everywhere. It doesn't matter if it's production or in the office or how you're onboarding, how you're marketing, how you're handling customer service. It can all be changed by using lean thinking principles. So I want to encourage you guys to get out there and change your processes. Try something new, do the experiment, and see. Because maybe you'll find somebody like Wyatt and you'll quickly be able to adapt them into your team. Hey, once again, thank you so much for tuning into the Lean by Doing podcast. I really appreciate every single person that's taking the time to consume this content. Before you go, though, please drop me a comment below. Tell me the things you like. Tell me the things you would like to see in the future. That would really help me shape this content so that it's directed more towards you. Also, hop down into the video description and there will be a link for our Lean Toolkit. It is a free download and it has a bunch of tools in there that you can use for your Lean implementation. And as always, I will catch you guys on the next episode.